Welcome, everybody. My name is Brian Holcomb. I'm the curator at the Moss Art Center. I'm happy to welcome artists William Cordova and Laurie Steelink here for their exhibitions. William's The Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Tenets of Southern Alchemy, and Laurie Steelink, Spirit is Alive, Magic is Afoot. Start with a little brief intro biography. So, William Cordova is a contemporary artist from Lima, Peru. He currently lives between Lima, Miami, and New York. William received his BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and an MFA from Yale University. William has been an artist in residence at the Studio Museum in Harlem, the American Academy in Berlin, Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, the Headland Center for Arts in Sausalito, Art Space in San Antonio, and the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. William was represented in the 2008 Whitney Biennial, 2004 Prospect in New Orleans, the 12th Havana Biennial in 2005. His work has been included in the collections in the Nasher Museum, as well as the Guggenheim. And he is the co-curator of the Prism Art Fair taking place in Art Basel, Miami since 2007. And also AIM. What was the first iteration of AIM? It doesn't have an iteration. Okay. So that takes place also during Art Basel, Miami, and at various locations around Miami. He was featured in Art 21 along with Carrie James Marshall, and in 2021 was recipient of the Guggenheim Fellowship Award. Williams' next exhibition, actually opening next week, Off the Wall at the Moody Center for the Arts in Rice University. And Williams' work references many, I guess, threads, like including African diaspora, nonlinear time, Peruvian martial arts traditions, and hip-hop. It's deeply rooted in different histories. Williams' work calls for social change, bringing to light the ways in which radical voices have been silenced by both normative culture and direct government intervention. Laurie Steelink is a contemporary artist of the Acapel Otham Nation, was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, currently lives and works in LA. She received her BFA from the San Francisco Art Institute and the MFA from the Mason Gross School of Arts from Rutgers. Laurie served as the director of Track 16 Gallery in West LA, as the founder of Cornelius Projects, an exhibition space in San Pedro, California, serving artists from San Pedro and the harbor areas. Laurie has shown her work internationally, and most recently is the recipient of the 2023 California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellowship for Los Angeles County. She was included in the 2022 California Biennale at the Orange County Museum of Art, a show titled Pacific Gold, and was a semifinalist in the National Portrait Gallery Triennial Altman Boschiever Portrait Competition in 2022. Her upcoming shows include Red Earth Gaze at the Angel Gate Cultural Center in LA, House of Disguise at the Keystone Art Space in LA, and Laurie's work surpasses medium and resists categorization, working through painting, sculpture, installation, video, and animatronics, touching on topics ranging from landscape ecology to spiritual connection, and as a testament to resistance and healing in the face of atrocities such as forced assimilation committed against Native communities. So, welcome, you all. Y'all been busy. So I kind of want to start off with how these shows came about, and in the background of placing these two artists together in a conversation. You know, both of these resulted from site visits. I mean, William I've known for 25 years. Laurie, I had the pleasure of meeting last year for the first time. But William visited the campus in, let's see, a year ago from last July with Yanira Collado, who was featured here last spring. And Laurie visited here, site visit of last June, and she was able to attend our opening reception for the summer exhibition. And just the importance of these site visits and how they inform the shows, and their visit to the campus and itself, basically is why you're seeing the shows in their iteration as it is. With William's show, it's all new work that was completed in the last year, and the big scaffold structure, which we'll talk about a little bit more. This is the first iteration of it, and it'll be the second iteration will be in New York next spring for your next solo show at Sycamore Jenkins. So we have the fortunate, I guess, gift of seeing it for the very first time, and we'll talk more about that process. Laurie, part of her practice, and we'll kind of talk about this more when we introduce you to the term cultural practitioner, which William has referred to himself, whereas not only are you an artist or you're a organizer, community organizer, social activist, like all of it is intertwined between all your practices. And for Laurie, it was very important for her to interact. When she came here, she met with Victoria Ferguson of the Citizen of the Monacan Nation to meet with one of the first peoples here as a way of welcoming her. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you first about, Laurie, was how did this part of social activization or researching the land that you're exhibiting on came into your work?
First of all, I want to say, Sketash, Anian Apshugi, Laurie Steelink, what I just said in my language, my Akmel Atam language, which I'm slowly learning, is good day. And I should actually say Sketash Hajin, which would be good day relatives. My name is Laurie Steelink, and I'm a member of the Akmel Atam Nation and a community member of the Gila River Indian community from Arizona. And I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored to be in your presence, and thank you for coming. And I hope I can make sense. Well, at the beginning, in terms of recognizing where I am in my presence and on this land, on this planet, and being able to be upright and wake up every morning and be able to breathe and go outside and see the sun and eat food that has been grown and be able to live some subsistence and like a life here stems from recognition of where I come from in my ancestry. I was adopted, so I didn't grow up with my culture or traditions. I grew up with the community that I was present in, raised by a Euro-American family that was well-educated and very politically progressive. And it wasn't until I became an adult and started interacting with what was then the punk rock community and celebrating diversity and where I come from in a sense. I always knew that I was adopted. I always knew that at the time the colonizer name was Pima Indian, but I always had a difficulty sort of bridging the gap between how I was raised, being an artist, and also embodying that ancestry that I didn't know. When I was 40, I met my birth mother and my other relatives and sort of started this journey in digging and unearthing my past and where I came from. With that, recognizing where I came from and my ancestry, I actually developed into getting involved with the Native community where I reside now, which is in San Pedro, California, and it has, because it's part of the city of Los Angeles and the county of LA, it is where the largest urban Native population is in the so-called United States. Recognizing also that I'm a guest on the land of the Gabrielino Tongva, which basically its territory is south of Malibu, if you know the Southern California coastline, down into where Orange County begins. At the California Biennial, I was asked to participate in, it took place at the new Orange County Museum of Art, which was actually on Ahachiman land. And because of my relationship with the Native community in Los Angeles, I'm familiar with Ahachiman citizens, and I asked the Pool, the spiritual leader of the Ahachiman, to come. Well, actually, I approached her first when I was invited to see how I could incorporate acknowledgement of them and, in a sense, ask for a loose permission to do what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to state that I was a guest on their land, and as an Akmel citizen, to pay tribute and honor and respect the fact that I'm on their land. And that's a recent thing that I actually went through this, in a sense, my own invented protocol to get permission and to also seek their involvement if they wanted to. And it turned out that we did an event, and Adelia Sandoval, the Pool of the Achaman people, came and told her origin story, the Achaman origin story, and brought her singing group to sing traditional Achaman songs. And that was all part of the piece. The piece doesn't end after the show's over. It continues, and in a sense it continues because I brought the booth here to Blacksburg, and with the site visit was introduced to Victoria, who is very steeped in the Monacan traditions and culture, and thought to invite her if she was willing to exhibit her work. As a cultural practitioner, part of my practice is to curate exhibitions and to involve community and to create community. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to be able to do that. And she was agreeable, and I'm very happy that she is.
Yeah, and that was something that when I invited Laurie and she visited and met with Victoria and Melissa Faircloth, it was just through that conversation that these opportunities came about, because a lot of times when we put these shows together, none of us know how they're going to turn out. And when I came in the other day and just saw how it came together, because you designed the layout for Victoria's work, and that was kind of felt like a gift in a way of entering in, is because you enter into the space to see your work and then you exit, and you're passing through Victoria's work both times. William, just kind of the same question is because, when did you start to, can you talk more about this, your practice as a cultural practitioner and how that includes being an artist, a mentor, an organizer?
Bueno, primero quiero decir buenos días, good morning, sak pasé, assalamu alaikum, and it's wonderful to be here and partake in this morning talk I'm a mentor in general. It slowly developed, doing art residencies, but also prior to that when I was in undergrad, when I was in grad school, because I felt that there was a necessity for students that were not necessarily in the same program I was in or even in the same school, but they needed some kind of guidance or tools. And I didn't share advice, I just shared opinions. And it was up to them to do what they needed to do with that or not. And as I kept doing art residencies to survive for 10 years, back to back, I became acquainted with a lot of practitioners everywhere. Not only visual practitioners, but that helped me cultivate a larger community throughout the States and in other countries too. Yeah. And I incorporate, and bridge a lot of practitioners' works, and vice versa. Even in this project here, there's a collaboration there with Andre Leon Gray, who's a self-taught photographer from North Carolina, from Raleigh. Those are the photographs he took. He also videotaped the performance, but we didn't share that. Some things aren't meant to be shared that way. So, and so there's a video, a film, a Super 8 film, in the exhibit. It's very subtle, but it's there, with Crystal Z. Campbell, who's an Oklahoma artist. And we did that performance more than 20 years ago. Actually, 20 years ago, yes. And we're still in touch and still collaborating. So, and I still continue to mentor. It's part of my practice, yeah.
And do you find that allows, both of you aren't like define one specific medium? And how does performance like come into the drawing and sculpture in your work? I mean, how does that open things up? Does it free you?
Laurie?
Laurie, yeah, you just got...
I'm free as a bird.
Yeah?
I'm, you know, when I was in school, you choose sculpture, painting, performance, video. Actually, at the San Francisco Art Institute, I was in the sculpture and performance video program, and then it turned into new genres. And I would say it's not new, it's an old genre, it's just a way of figuring out how to, I guess, make it more appealing. I think that in terms of development and choosing mediums and so on, the older I've gotten, there are no boundaries. I'm trying to diminish those boundaries between the actual physical creation of work and what the process of thinking about it and developing these ideas is all part of the work. And the work, like I said, it doesn't really end. It continues, and it takes on a new life. Attempting to work with other mediums that I haven't really been all that immersed in. For example, I did work in video when I was in undergraduate school, and I created a video here, actually, on site with images that I brought with me, and I want to continue to do that. And also just being in this environment and talking to classes, students, young people, and then people who come to see the show is all part of the work. And I guess that's where the cultural practitioner becomes like the label for saying what it is that I do, or multidisciplinary artist. One of my friends said she hoped that they would just do away with that term, but yeah, I mean, it's the whole act, the whole physical act of creating something it encompasses everything. It encompasses my experiences, and what I gain through this interaction that I have with you is going to influence the next work that I do or the next words out of my mouth. But it is all part of it. It's a circular, cyclical kind of wheel that's constantly turning, and then work gets produced, and it changes depending upon the situation that it's presented in.
And thinking about, I'm curious, with the Indian market booth that you did, I mean, do you consider that in a way another performance? Or, I mean, where did that come into the work from? I know it might have been some years from the Rutgers and stuff to the first one. Because when did you first do the market booth?
Not that long ago. In 2019, actually, was the first time I applied, and it's an application process to apply to be in the Indian market. The oldest one is in Santa Fe. It's just over 100 years old. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Indian markets, but they happen around the country at certain times of the year. And it's a process. It's an odd process because to be in an Indian market, the regulations are that you must be a registered member of a federally recognized tribe. And so who's the federal government is what dictates that you are of indigenous Native American ancestry. That's a whole nother can of worms. But with the, after meeting my birth mother, and then also this growth that took place, somewhat, it was like a growth burst for me as an artist and as a human being, that I, the label of identifying as a Native American artist sort of came into my whatever you call it, my bandwidth. And so with that, I thought, well, and other friends had actually encouraged me, other Native friends who had participated in Indian markets encouraged me to apply. Knowing that my work was not at all, in a sense, traditional. I'm not a fourth generation weaver, but I recognize that history, and I recognize also my work as coming out of a tradition, almost unconsciously, but then consciously. And so I applied for the Santa Fe Indian Market in 2019, and I was ready to go. I had my booth walls made to fit with the less expensive footprint, which is 10 by 5. And I knew also that I was going to be kind of the oddball, the odd person out in terms of what it was that I was presenting, and I was very excited about that, and I looked at it as a performance, as an action, in a sense, to present my work in this situation. But in 2019, my four-legged soulmate left for the spirit world, and it was right around the time that I needed to go, and I couldn't leave him, and so I opted not to go. And so then 2020 rolls around, 2021 rolls around, there are no markets, there's no people gathering really in public spaces. And then 2021, I'm sorry, it was 2020, it was, yeah, 20, I guess it was 2021 or 2022, now I've lost track. I went to the Santa Fe Indian Market, and I also, in 2019, with my pal, Rocket Morton, went to the Autry Museum of the American West, which is in Los Angeles. It was an easy market to do. But yeah, it created a lot of conversation amongst visitors, like, what are you doing? What is going on here? And that discussion, the whole experience was informed my work. It was part of my work, and it continues to be, and placement of it is also very much an important part of it as well. And yeah.
And so I'm going to go back to you, William, now. So with the, I wanted to talk a little bit about, one is like portability of the markets of setting up and going out, but also with you, with referencing the boombox and the portability of that. How did that start first coming into your work? Or the idea of like transmission and transmitting?
It's really hard for me to talk about my work.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather talk about other people's works or films I just watched or films I want to see. Because it's such a personal narrative that I tend to internalize. Being Andean, I internalized, but you're made aware of it when you go to certain places. You take it for granted when you're home, being in Peru or my family's house. The topic of boomboxes or radio, transistor radios, those are, I wouldn't say they're soundtracks to my life. Sounds romantic and also cliche. There's truth to it, but I wouldn't go that route. I'm not trying to avoid that. I just want to state it. They were definitely vessels. They are vessels. They're portraits of people from my past, of events, moments. The same way that we sometimes keep certain ephemera that to others might not make any sense or have any economic value. Sometimes spaces are also charged with certain energy that we place or others place on it, or just the earth places on it. And so mostly I drew these vessels, these kind of conduits and bridges to accessing the past, to celebrating, but also acknowledging in certain private ways, in public ways, my own relationships. But the process that I took, and the end conclusion, is a very plural statement, so that others can come into the piece and have their own interpretations, their own experiences with it. Yeah. For me, it has a lot of different meanings, these objects, as well as every other piece of work that I do. Yeah.
And also like well, you often work in suites of drawings. Like it's not just individual, it's layers of
Yeah,
history.
you mentioned that that I worked. Well, everything that's in the exhibit was not created for the exhibit. It came together. My process, like Laurie, is very fluid, and things are incorporated from previous years. The video or film actually is from 2003. I just reorganized things the way that some people reorganize their homes or select their outfits for that day or for that week. Somewhat like that. Because they're all extremely personal. But they don't have this economic preciousness to them. So I make sure of that because I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. And even though I'm contaminated, I still try to have a perspective from the economic art world. Because there's many art worlds, there isn't just one. So there's a lot of dimensions, and I kind of navigate through that.
Yeah, I mean, both of you use the aspect of everything is fluid, like you said, is a perfect way of saying how the works you made for the show wasn't like, oh, this is how the show, it's just assembled in the show, just like Laurie with your markets. They get reorganized as basically when you go upstairs and you see the installation of Laurie's upstairs, it's different than the photo that we saw it was the photo from the California Biennale of the market. But the images and objects that go into each of the shows include, these, like Laurie, like with the way that you treat your paintings and how they become like regalia or medicine boxes. Could you talk about that fluidity?
Yeah. So to get to that answer, I'm just going to say that so I've been producing work for a long time and producing a fair amount of it and amassing a fair amount of it and carrying it from one place to another as baggage, and that could be metaphorical or physical. And so at a certain point, and this was sort of around the time when all this other stuff started happening in terms of realizations and awareness, I started to take old work and cut it up and make new work out of it. And it was a process. It was a ceremony, in a sense, to do this kind of thing, because I really loved the work, but I also knew that it could continue on in another way and have another life. And so I started doing that and then kind of reconfiguring pieces together, like almost like a puzzle, creating a new puzzle, and adding, accessorizing the work like an outfit, like with elements that would take your eye from one point to another point, or in some cases, and I was given the opportunity here at the mosque to ask for that support would be available, would be built, which Rudy, who was sitting here, made some really wonderful supports for these framed pieces that could go on the wall. But I saw them as these sort of shields, as these presences that I wanted to have freestanding in the space, and I think they work really well. And then it sort of ventures out of the two-dimensional work into three-dimensional elements within an installation, and they become these characters or beings within the space, and having another level of energy and power within the overall work. I'm a fan of powwows because of the energy and because of the color and because of people from indigenous nations coming together to celebrate their culture and their dances and their songs. And it's a pretty amazing experience to be in the presence, almost in the middle of that, and to actually be a participant in the open dance portions of a powwow, and to dance with the people. And I'm inspired by the color, the regalia that people have used, and how that's also evolved over time to include incredibly bright fluorescent colors. And the last large powwow that I went to, which was called the Gathering of the Nations, and it hadn't happened for 3 years because of the pandemic, it was an incredible experience to be in this arena in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on the fairgrounds, and have an announcer that sounded like, a very lively FM radio announcer talking about the dancers, and I'm not even going to try to mimic what it was, but it was incredible. And these different groups of singers and drum groups around the arena, and these dancers coming out, and this amazing light show. And when I came to do my site visit at the Moss and saw the theater, I was like, yeah, I want to try to do something like that. We did it on a small scale, but that aspect of including lights and also illuminating the fluorescent colors that I use in my work was really wonderful to see, and I'm thankful for that opportunity. But so the addition of light, color, the fringe, the beads that I've the beaded rope necklaces that I've made that are included, that I would normally be wearing in this situation, but they're actually included on the deer spirit, and different elements that reflect the light are important to me to continue to add. And the pieces will change over and evolve over time. Like I said, it's never complete, never done.
Yeah, so, I mean, in a way all the work is very contextual, basically when you show it in time and place and space. Maybe you talk a little bit about each of y'all's approach to problem solving. And I would just say it was like with your use with more of tradition, saying the difference that we were just talking about earlier with the differences between the man and the maze, and William and your with the labyrinth, and each kind of deals with life's journeys, and what I would just like to know is like one, not only is the symbol like representative of certain idea, but how do you use that as like an entryway into your work, but also as just a way of navigating how you develop the work? It's your turn, William. I'm going to go over here to this labyrinth here.
Well, the image that you see there is not a labyrinth.
What?
It's a spiral.
It's a spiral.
Infinity. But I'll share a short story. I like telling stories, but they don't always make sense. It's up to the individuals to make sense of it. When Laurie and I were talking about grad school experiences, and I just outside right before we began the conversation here, and she reminded me of a piece that came to me in 2002 during my first year in grad school, because the institution that I was going to I had just started attending was in a struggle with the government of Peru, because the government of Peru wanted these over 200 Inca artifacts that the institution had borrowed between 1910 and 1914. They wanted them back. They had been asking for them back. The institution didn't want to give it back because they said, well, you guys don't have a proper place to put them. And who is the institution that doesn't own these items going to tell this government where to put their items, and that they don't have adequate place to put their items? And so I went into the institution's special archives and liberated some boxes. Had to figure out how to get in without the sensors and the cameras not catching me. So came in like a ninja and left like a ninja. I didn't know what I was appropriating intentionally, because I didn't want to create this hierarchy in my consciousness of what I was going to select. The idea was to appropriate something the same way that the institution had appropriated something, not knowing its spiritual, physical value. So I intentionally became ignorant on purpose. Took the box, kept it for 2 years. I was about to graduate in 2004, spring, and I decided to open the box. And it was a big collection of vinyl records, mostly from the late 60s up into the early 80s. Mind you, this is the early 2000s. And I want to say I was reading Labyrinth by Jorge Luis Borges and Octavio Paz, Labyrinth of Solitude, the Spanish version. But I wasn't. I had already read them, but it would just be too proper for me to say I was reading these 2 books and it inspired me, but they didn't. I think long term, yes, it was inspiring. But the idea and the concept of labyrinth has always been with me before I read those books. They just illuminated certain things in my consciousness. The dimensionality of being. And so I ended up creating this labyrinth in a space called the pit. That's where all the crits are. And it's almost exactly like this, except that it's all concrete white, or just natural concrete. Anyway, I stood up all the vinyl records. I didn't use any tape or any adhesives or anything. They just stood up, and some of them could be, the jacket you could open up into like a C, or I don't know. I figured out how to do it on the spot, and then I photographed it and put them all back in the box. And it was interesting because then the institution found out what I had done because I exhibited them in a very, very public venue in New York. And they called me up and asked me if they wanted to buy it for their collection. And I thought it interesting because if they had acquired it, that would collapse the whole concept. Shortly thereafter, President Obama worked with the former Mexican president, whose name I forget, in getting this institution and the government of Peru to work out the differences and figure out a way to collectively resolve this dilemma. And so the artifacts were returned to the government of Peru. But I didn't return those artifacts that I took. I gave them to the Mali Museum in Peru, where they are today. But yeah, labyrinths, well, you can look it up, what a labyrinth means. But that's more about infinity. Right. Like Frank Lloyd Wright's Spiral, Guggenheim, and where that came from, Islamic architecture.
And I mean, but we go back to like the concept of time and just meaning and how that changes over time as we like journey through. I kind of want to talk too is, I mean, just with the encoding, with the textile encoding and your use like a way of approaching abstraction, which and how that relates to the scaffolding in the show.
Oh, it relates less to the structure.
Right.
But then it does relate in reference to scaffold weaving, which originates in Peru and Bolivia area over 1,000 years ago, and it's not something that was practiced or used anywhere else. And so I was riffing on the word the English word scaffold. And when constructing or when designing the scaffolding here at Virginia Tech. And the abstract piece in the front is a perspective of different Andean martial art movements that have been abstracted and coded into these color schemes that relate to specific Andean color schemes. But it's also, the perspective is from an aerial perspective, but it's also from underneath and from the sides, both sides at the same time. Yeah, so it's addressing it from different points of view and also different times. Yeah, so it might be one movement being documented from different sides and all at the same time. Yeah.
And also, I mean, would you say that like the spiral, the labyrinth, and even the scaffolding and the placement of the space, I mean, it's about like moving around and delaying the reveal, or the fact that like things will appear, like meanings will appear over time?
Well, yeah, the pieces has a lot to do with strategies, kind of like a checkerboard or a chessboard, or a breakdance platform, or an Andean tunic, which were used for militaristic purposes. The ones that I'm referencing, which are black and white checkered tunics, those are for militaristic purposes. And I knew that before I even read a book in Peru or in the US. I just knew. And then eventually when I read in school, that's what it was for. You kind of know these things without being informed by outsiders or insiders. And that goes along with a lot of other things, you know. Knowing that Tupac Shakur was not Peruvian, but knowing that he had a certain significant role in not only in hip hop but as an activist. Before I knew where his name originated, which is Tupac Amaru, the Inca king in the 1500s, but also the Jose Condorcanqui, Tupac Amaru II, the revolutionary Andean warrior from the 1780s, who with his wife was Afro-Andean, Micaela Bastidas, rebelled against the Spanish government at the time. When I first heard Tupac, when he was in Digital Underground, I immediately knew that there's a significant role that he had to play. Without knowing his politics, it was in the name. You don't give somebody that kind of name. That name was outlawed in the 1970s during the Cold War in Latin America. It was outlawed in Uruguay because it was such a symbolic and powerful name. Here, they would just character assassinate somebody named that way. There, they outlawed it. You couldn't write it, you couldn't say it, you couldn't speak it, you can transmit it. And so, I think a lot of those symbols are incorporated, abstracted sometimes into my work. It's a lot of layered. And so, sometimes when I'm asked, I don't know which layer I'm going to be selecting from. So, but yeah, eventually I found out that Tupac was the son of Afeni Shakur, a Black Panther from New York. And his godfather was Geronimo Gijaga, Geronimo Pratt, who was a LA Black Panther leader, defense leader. And he went to Uruguay in 1969, 1970, and met the Tupamarus in Uruguay, urban guerrilla warriors. And when he came back to the States, he told Afeni, and she named her son Tupac Amaru Shakur. So there's all these connections. So hip-hop, sure, it's there. hip hop is, to me, is punk. Like Nina Simone is punk, you know. Inti Illimani is punk. Laurie's punk.
Yeah, that's right. Laurie was part of 2 punk rock bands. Yeah. Yeah, 5 punk rock bands. Well, just a last question for Laurie, before we open it up to the audience. Just with the connections that William was talking about and everything, but with yours, with the landscape, with the Sonora Desert, and then how you use that to tie in Victoria's, like the landscape here, but the cattails.
When I did my site visit and met Victoria, we had a discussion at the garden that was the indigenous garden that is located in the agricultural area of Virginia Tech. And we got to talking about how our people have used natural elements to create structures to dwellings, clothing, all necessary things, medicine, food, grass mats for sleeping on or covering what is referred to here as wigwams. And it's not grass, they're grass, but they're reeds of cattails, which grow, are very much present in this area, and they are around water. And I started talking about the saguaro cactus, which has been ever present in my life, and I always regarded these presence as these beings. I imagined all sorts of stories, told myself all sorts of stories as a child about what this cactus with these arms represented, and thought of them as relatives, as protectors, these large things that withstood really harsh climates, and how they too, over their lives, support life from all sorts of creatures burrowing into them and using them as their own dwellings. And the breakdown of them over the course of over 100 years, depending upon the life of the saguaro, and how then what's left over is useful to the people to create structures, and then also with the O'atum, the Tohono O'atum and the Akimel O'atum, there is the beginning of the year is actually the time of the harvest of the fruit that the cactus produces. And there's a whole ceremony for the collection of this fruit, which is edible, and it is used in various other ways. But that is the calendar for the O'atum, is the harvest of the flowering and the fruit before the flowering, the fruit of the saguaro. And I think it was a sort of an interesting kind of exchange at the point where she was talking about cattails, and the use of cattails was very common. And I said that when I came to Virginia Tech, I wanted to bring something of my upbringing, my relationship to the land, to the environment, to the landscape, which was the saguaro cactus. And we both agreed that we've got cattails and we've got cactus. And it's a nice kind of marriage to consider. And not only did that exist, but there's also this mural on the outside of the upper part of the moss that was made by
Connor McGrady.
Connor, yeah, which I responded to on the site visit, that it was a line that I wanted to carry over into the space to continue the landscape, but the landscape changes. And so that was hand applied to the walls. And it also created sort of a curtain or a window to the video, which also then utilizes images from the Sonoran Desert of the saguaro. And just in terms of cyclical things like happening along the way, in reference to the maze that I painted and with help from the moss on the back of my booth. That is a design, a symbol that is found in early O'odham baskets of the Akmel and the Tohono O'odham, and the Hopi have actually used it. And there's different stories, origin stories that relate to that that maze, which is in today's understanding of it is labeled as man in the maze, but it represents Brother Seah in the Akmel O'odham tradition, and there's many stories about him, and he was considered a creator. And with the Tohono O'odham as Itoi, and there's a story about him too. But the sort of general understandings, this is the way of life. And it's circular. Even though there's a center, once you get to the center, there's a continuation. It never really ends. And so having that be present on the back of the booth to add to the landscape was something that I wanted to do. But I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to end this, but it continues. And with the video, I reference the saguaro as grandmother and grandfather, because as time goes on, as I make my way through this maze, through this path, I'm finding out that a lot of the things that I thought as a child or as a young adult, before finding out from my relatives, my Akmel O'odham relatives, are things that, as you say, were present, whether in me, whether they had been recognized or not, that there was an understanding that, yes, these were my protectors. And I recognized them as my protectors at a very young age. And they are our relatives. And I really miss that landscape. And so it's nice to have it here and to be offered, to offer it to Virginians.
Well, thank you. Nice suggestion. So this last part is, if anybody has any questions from the audience for either Laurie or William, feel free. Anybody? Yeah. I guess I covered so much. Oh, go ahead.
I actually had a question about materials. You discussed yesterday that you wouldn't mention the company where you got those paint chips, but I wanted to ask about the oil sticks, because you said you got them for $1 something compared to.
Yes, we were talking about oil sticks. If everyone's familiar with oil sticks, or oil bars, they look like crayons, but they're on steroids, or 5 times bigger. And they're so great to use. You have a lot more control with it, and you can use it like a crayon, but it's just they're so dense. And I don't know how to paint. I went to grad school for painting. Let's see what I did. So I applied oil sticks, like a 5-year-old, which is better than an adult, oftentimes. But I can't remember the name of the company. But I will give it to Brian. Brian, your teacher, your faculty member who brought you to. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, we'll get it.
I'll give him the link, and you can go crazy with that, because you're going to save hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Yeah. I bought enough for 4 years, just in case.
Yeah, because they're used for construction sites, right?
Yes, these oil sticks are used for constructions, for marking on metal and things like that. But they're exactly the same. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of efficiency in both of these exhibitions.
Accepting the premise that we're all, in one way or another, artists. And Laurie, we briefly talked last night about the opportunity, if not responsibility, of artists making social commentary. And particularly for our young artists that are here, what do the two of you, as you're to be commended, by the way, for pursuing what I would, in a general say, is social commentary. What do you feel about the visual arts in particular today and in the future in terms of that opportunity for social commentary? Is it important beyond your personal thought for the general state of art?
Well, I'm a closet activist. I do a lot of work. I don't use my name. Aside from funding, I also do a lot of graphic design, a lot of fundraising, a lot of liberating of certain things for causes. I've always done that. But I don't like to apply my name to it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get away with it. And I mentor a lot. I don't teach in any institution. I need to be fluid. And all my work is about social commentary. But it's like this. Back in 1984, a musician named Bruce Springsteen released a song called Born in the USA. And both the Democratic and Republican parties that were running for office embraced that composition. Neither side read the lyrics. And most people didn't either. They listened to the music, but they didn't really listen to what he was saying. He was being critical about the U.S. government in Vietnam, the abandonment of Vietnam veterans, the savagery created in Vietnam and thereafter. Ronald Reagan didn't pay attention, and neither did his party. They just used the song. So a lot of times, myself as a practitioner, my work is in layers. It's somewhat abstracted. My work is protractive, so sometimes it's representational, but it's not always didactic. I may speak somewhat didactic to the work, but I also have to allow the work to be poetic. And I think for something to succeed and evolve, it has to be that, or in between there. But I get down and dirty when I need to, with students, with folks, with organizations. My politics is very clear, but I also don't need to ram it down people's throats. Not that neither one of us is doing that right now, but there's a way to tell a story and say what you mean, but don't be mean. And I'm really, I'm happy that you asked that question. I wanted to share that, my closet experience. Yeah. I read a lot of books when I was a child. My mom bought the Funk and Wagnalls encyclopedias, and I read them in the closet because that's where they were stored. So my world blew up and exploded in my mind, reading encyclopedias inside the closet with a little flashlight. She wouldn't allow us to take them out of the closet because they were for my sisters, older sisters. So since I couldn't take them out, I had to come in. So, but anyway, Laurie, your 2 cents.
Thank you, William. I would say just being a human being requires you to be involved in some form of social activism. It's important, because if you don't participate, then you're just sort of standing by and allowing for things to happen to you. There's something to that as well, but I almost feel like my life being adopted by the Steelink family, who were activists, political activists. My parents met on a picket line banning the bomb in the 1940s and started an intentional housing, one of the first intentional housing communities in Los Angeles. And then actually starting the Southern Arizona chapter of the ACLU and being involved in local politics. My father was, and my mother was, as a supporter, and being very outspoken about about inequality in general, and the adoption of both my sister and I. It's sort of like I was born into this, and you know, as a punk rocker though, at a certain time, you know, so you got to go through your life and be rebellious, and so I was sort of like, even though I was being an activist and not really absorbing that, I was also kind of like, I'm not going to do what my parents do in the way that they did it. That was the rebellion. But as I get older, it seems like I'm becoming more like my parents. But what's important now is being involved in the Indigenous Native community, and just by that sheer involvement in organizing events, and scheduling programming and so on around this community is my work, and it influences my work and how I present my work and present myself and present my ideas, and have conversations and meaningful conversations, and hopefully hopefully, no, it is true that I get something from you all and from having these individual conversations or group conversations, and it just continues. But I think it's, as I said, it's important just as human beings to be conscious of where we are and how we're affecting each other and this planet, and to proceed in a good way, in a very conscious way, in an awake way, and not just sit by and be idle.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming and everything. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So, my question was something I feel sometimes in academia and maybe from society, where you have to have an area of specialization as an artist, or maybe even a theme. And I was wondering, why was it important for you all to bring multiple themes into your work and the multiple media? And I think you already touched on this a little bit. Is it related to boundaries? Why is that important for you? Multiple media.
Why multimedia?
Yeah.
I was thinking about food, making an omelet. I'm sure everyone here has tried one type or another omelet. Even the vegans. We're not all born vegans. So you start adding different ingredients, condiments, enriches the experience. The process for a practitioner, a visual practitioner, is more complicated because we grew up in a society of categorization. And we graduate into that. at a certain point where when we go to institutions of higher learning. And when that happens, we're kind of whipped into specific categories, certain hierarchies. It's how capitalism works. Without it, it just wouldn't work. So there's no difference in the visual art programs, most of them anyway, in this country. And because of that, you end up feeling that you're doing something wrong by being interested in not only painting, but performance. Not only performance, but photography or sound. And you think, well, how am I going to get all this stuff together in one space? Well, there's always order and chaos. I'm sure you all have a ton of clothes, not in your closet, but on your floor. Yeah, but you know where it is. You know when to select this. Well, if you go in here, you know, you figured out a system. But that takes time. So I always tell students to just take time, especially if you're just starting out. For those later on, they can figure it out much quicker because you're already seasoned. But that happened to me when I was an undergrad. The difference is that the faculty in my junior college allowed me to embrace all these things. They just supported them. They didn't question it. When I transferred to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, there it was an interdisciplinary school. There they supported it also. But a lot of times they pushed me to just select one or the other. But because I was kind of groomed and nurtured in this community college, I knew not to do that. Sometimes I would try, it didn't make any sense. And unfortunately for some students, they're kind of pushed to just select one. And that's just denying your own creativity, your own way out. So needless to say, what I was doing, kind of interdisciplinary, installation-based work, was necessary because they all kind of feed into each other. Yeah. They may not always work individually, but I like to run in packs with my friends. Yeah. And so those components all support one another. They are constellations. And the only way it makes sense is for them to all be in the same place. We're all creating constellations, whether it's the clothes that you live on your bedroom floor or the food that just doesn't make sense in the refrigerator, that maybe a culinary expert might go in there like, oh no, this is perfect. But somebody might not use the cilantro, I don't know. So, Laurie?
I'm hungry now. I agree with what he says. I mean, he said it very eloquently in the idea of making an omelet and the use of food and ingredients, and we're all ingredients here. So, and obviously our interpretation of who we are and what we've been told, this is how we have to behave, this is how we have to dress, or this is the colors that we're supposed to wear because it identifies us as being from one gender or this gender. That is peeling away, as is our practices in a sense, and trying to stay within a particular area or working with a certain medium. It's a lot more fun, I have to say, to experiment and to incorporate, you know, the many possibilities that are out there. And I think of it like ingredients or as a cast of characters. And that includes humans, and that includes everything else that's here.
Last
Thank
chance.
you.
I have a question about language, either literally or visually, or another way of expressing how, if either of you consider that, especially thinking about kind of home languages or code switching in the art world, and thinking of maybe the U.S. versus Peru, how, if that's considered, and how you express that, how language, for instance, identity, if that's been a part of your considered either in your art or kind of how you express yourself about your art?
How I can respond to that is because I'm coming to this late, I'm actually starting to learn my language, and it does affect how I think about my work because there's no real direct translation for the words in a lot of cases. And so, and that, is also, when you think about the way that we have been sort of accustomed to ideas and understanding them and our interpretation, it's constantly changing depending upon the situation. So it's hard. It's hard to communicate. Sometimes it seems easy and you're on that same wavelength, but I'm pleased to be able to have this experience and to have someone who has been a speaker of the language since birth, to be able to converse with them in very simple terms with the language, but also have them inform me of what, depending upon what time it is, day it is, this could mean something completely different. And I think that's a really wonderful thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think all people of color are polylingual for a lot of reasons, survival reasons, adapting to different environments. We turn it off, we turn it on, we keep it in mute, pause, forward, rewind, and record a lot. And it's no different from my practice. Well, my titles, the audiences, I'm always thinking of a broad language audience all the time. When I do projects outside, I'm doing the same thing. When I do exhibits in Europe, all my titles are in Quechua, especially in Spain. And when I do them in South America, I don't do them in English. I translate everything into Spanish. I write my own synopsis, my own press release, because I want to make sure that the institutions don't get them wrong. Yeah, and not that they will, I just don't want to give them that chance. But yeah, all the titles of here have multi-titles. Like one is called Entitled Geronimo 1 and 2. Why 1 and 2? You can look it up and see Geronimo the Apache or Geronimo Jijaga. What's the difference? There's hardly any, only time. But then that's relevant, relative. Yeah, language is extremely, extremely powerful tool and very important, I think, to our practices.
Could you tell us about the scone? The scone?
Hey, William, could I handle that one?
No.
Okay.
No, you can say it in Spanish. You can translate it in Spanish. I'll do it in English. It's a stone Laurie gave me. In conversation, we were talking about sticks. And the next day I decided to think about stones. And I was thinking of one of my cats. When I looked down and I saw the stone. So I thought, that's my cat saying hello from the other dimension. And so Brian was generous enough to donate this object.
Pedestal? Maybe.
Your turn in Spanish.
Yes, sir. No, I only can embarrass myself in
Pig
French.
Latin.
All right, I just wanted to, William and Laurie, thank you so much for being so generous. So both William and Laurie's show is on view until December 17th. We'll have more programming, class tours, and if you want to bring your classes or anything, feel free to reach out to us, okay? All right, thank y'all.